2015 was a really interesting year for me, as I'm sure it was for many other people. But my year got started off hot on day one. That's right, because on January 1st, my first assignment of the new year was to photograph an event called Sweat Your Prayers, which is basically a very raw, free-form expression of self through dance and movement at a local dance and yoga studio. What I didn't know going into it was that in order for me to be granted access to the event, organizers required that I participate. Now, there are really only about 3 people on this earth that can get me to dance at the drop of a hat, and those are my wife and my children. And in this case, I decided to make an exception, provided that there was no photographic proof of my participation. Later in January, I was fortunate to be positioned with President Obama's press pool when he made a visit to the University of Kansas. This is the first presidential visit Lawrence has had since William Howard Taft came in 1911. And although I spent about 10 hours with the president's detail, I was really only in his presence for about an hour, and that includes his speech at Anschutz Pavilion. I think most photographers I know would agree that often the pictures that really stand out at the year's end are the ones that we find around the periphery and away from our central purpose for being at an event. Fortunately for a photojournalist like myself, Lawrence has an array of colorful people and events to draw my attention throughout the year. In March, I got to hang out with Matthew Whaley, a Lawrence High student with cerebral palsy who is competing in the shot put. After a couple of weeks of attending practices, meets, a little bit of life at school and at home, I walked away from the situation thoroughly impressed with not only Matthew's perseverance, but also with the support that he receives from fellow students, his coaches, his family, and the faculty at LHS. I really enjoy shooting portraits, if for no other reason than that they exist as the few situations where a photographer is afforded a certain level of control. Almost always, the ones that work out the best are the ones where the subject is on board with the idea from the beginning. In city politics, Mayor Jeremy Farmer left his post and town when it was discovered that he allegedly overpaid himself while serving as director of the local food bank Just Food. In this picture, Vice Mayor Leslie Soden is picking up his gavel when it became abundantly clear to everyone in the room that the mayor would no longer be showing up to city commission meetings. In state politics, the Kansas legislative session extended to a record 113 days as they battled to pass a tax plan. I imagine it's pretty hard being a member of the Kansas University football team, considering that they went 0-12 and new head coach David Beatty's first year. And although the scoreboard didn't really reflect it, I did see some hopeful signs of life in freshman quarterback Ryan Willis and some of the other players that would suggest that the team is going to get it turned around. Now, last year's KU men's basketball team was pretty good, but they had their season cut a little bit short when they lost to Wichita State in the NCAA tournament. I also cut my season a little bit short as my wife Louise and I were delighted to welcome this crazy dude who came on March 4th. And although it's early to say, I do think that this year's team is playing with a level of energy that will serve them well later into the year. To everyone who I met in 2015, and for all of those living in our wonderful town, cheers to having an awesome 2016.